Hi everyone, welcome. I'm preparing to feed a couple worm bins, and what seems to be on the menu a lot these days is watermelon rinds, as you can see. The stuff keeps stacking up and I keep feeding it to the worms. Luckily it's the sort of thing that pretty much vanishes without a trace. Next time you get back into the system and check for leftovers, maybe you'll find a little thin, paper-thin piece of melon rind out there. But for the most part, the worms gobble it all right up. So the systems we're checking in on are the original red wiggler worms. They are now 175 days of age. Bins number 1 and bin number 2 are right here. And over those 175 days, 25 weeks, we've given them 15 feedings so far. I believe the interval between feedings last time was 12 days. Today we're coming back after a 13-day pause to give them that yummy feast of coffee and watermelon rind. So I'm going to get a glove on, get these systems up on the bench, and we're going to get to work. So now, even though the last feeding that these guys got was capped off with a treatment, a top dressing of leafy matter, which always includes the leaf stems, these are always the things that I start to think about in the older systems in terms of whether or not I really want to be adding leaves along with their leaf stems or not. Just sort of anticipating the point in time in the future when I might want to start getting the systems geared up for harvest, and I would not want to see a system loaded with a bunch of material like leaf stems that have not yet had a chance to break down. So even though the last check-in included a top dressing of leaves, I have a feeling that it might be the last at this point. Now it's true that the prepared bedding that I use usually also includes leaves. So even here I could see the stem of a leaf that came in with the leaves, but usually the leaves that I include in my prepared bedding is leafy matter that I've run through my screen and did my best to exclude large chunks of material. So it's still kind of along for the ride as far as leaf stems go when I use my prepared bedding. But I think that that's what we're going to end up using today. As far as this leafy matter out on the top surface, I'm going to blend all that in. The only reason I'm kind of going around the edge right now is because I do remember from reviewing the video from our last check-in 13 days ago how I was noticing so many springtails, and it seemed unusual how they were right along the edge in the system that I noticed it in last time. Kind of making me wonder if perhaps we can do a little something next time. At the end of this check-in, perhaps replace the plastic cover in such a way that it doesn't go all the way out to the edge. Maybe we'll just replace it in such a way that it's kind of offset from the edge, giving the very, very edge of each system a chance to get a little bit more airflow, allowing the material out there on the very, very edge to kind of dry out a little bit and perhaps become less of a haven for the springtails. Yeah, you know, I think that's what I'm going to do. I think there's another pair of systems where I did a similar thing, where I felt like I really wanted to maintain the moisture retention capability that plastic covers bring, but allow for just a little bit additional breathing. So I put the plastic on in such a way that it keeps the center of the system well covered, but I left the perimeter in such a way that it can breathe. So here's the, man, these go back quite a way now. I would almost have to say perhaps a month and a half at this point. Definitely 3 or 4 check-ins at this point since we put sweet potatoes in, or yams, I'm not sure which they were. Perhaps sweet potato. And the inside of the sweet potato got gobbled up 1, 2, 3, and the skin remained. And I had this feeling like, well, you know, if they enjoyed the inside of the sweet potato so much that they did away with it so quickly, then they're probably going to enjoy eventually working down the the peel of it as well, but the thing is sticking around in a big way. And thank you to, I think it was DC, one of my viewers pointed out how, I guess it was something I made in the last video, I believe, where I made reference to how I thought potatoes were related to sweet potatoes or yams, but apparently they're a very, very different vegetable. So they're really unrelated entirely. So I stand corrected, and I always enjoy learning something new from the comments when people point out things that I might have said incorrectly or things that I was unclear or uncertain about and threw out there as an open question or something. So thank you for that clarification, DC. And let's see, how are things over here? Usually by the time we get to the second of two bins like this, we're kind of expecting to see much of the same as what we saw in the first bin. And so far so good. So I'm already seeing like the half of a mango seed like we already spotted over here. And here's a pumpkin stem that we bumped into. So we're definitely going to see a pumpkin stem here too. In fact, I believe that in bin number 2 we even had 2 pumpkin stems. And then there's going to be that sweet potato or yam skin. Now these made me wonder last time, since they were sort of sticking around and making me wonder why hadn't they been consumed yet by the worms. They're paper towels, from what I can tell, or maybe napkins, but usually paper products get worked down pretty quickly in my worm bins. But for some reason those were really sticking around. Here's the sweet potato or yam skin. Couldn't even tell you which one it is at this point. Or if maybe that's just an interchangeable word for the same exact thing. I don't know. So we've opened up a fairly good space in here into which we can drop today's feeding, which will be accompanied by my prepared bedding. But since we've got replacement coffee filters, I thought we could use the old feeding zone indicators as supplemental bedding in the feeding zones, and then in we could come with nice replacement feeding zone indicators. So let's begin piling in their food. We'll drop in the coffee first, setting aside the filters to be used as feeding zone indicators when we're all set. And then in can come a little bit of melon. And as this stuff starts to thaw out and spill out its lovely juices, it's going to add a good bit of moisture to the system, further making me believe that leaving the edges of the plastic covers a little bit offset from the edge of the bin is probably a good idea. And I guess it was this stuff here, this old bedding type material, these chunks of paper, I believe, perhaps paper towel or maybe napkin, I'm not even sure what they are. Those were the things that I wanted to kind of put right on top of some of these pieces of watermelon, and then even place more watermelon smack on top of it, so that perhaps now that it's surrounded by all kinds of stuff that the worms are really going to enjoy nibbling on, perhaps it'll give that material a chance at finally breaking down after sort of sitting here idle in these systems for a couple check-ins now. It kind of raised an eyebrow, or it kind of drew my attention there as far as how come it was still remaining, making me wonder if it was perhaps some sort of a material that I mistook to be a compostable paper product and maybe didn't even belong in the systems. And now that it's been going for a good couple check-ins, it makes me even wonder again if that might in fact be the case, or maybe there was just something on those pieces of paper. Perhaps something was wiped up with those that the worms are not enjoying. I mean, I think that they're not too keen on greasy, oily things. Kind of makes me wonder if those pieces of napkin might have been, or pieces of paper towel might have been used to rest prepared bacon onto, to soak up some of the excess grease. And if that was the case, perhaps that's turning the worms off, preventing them from wanting to nibble on the stuff. I don't know. I guess if it just continues to show up and not get eaten by the worms, then maybe it's time to remove it, you know? So I think what we're going to do now is take all that lovely leafy matter that had been sprinkled out on the top surface at the end of the last check-in and help integrate it with the surrounding materials, kind of infusing a lot of this material that's almost castings only anymore out here with a little bit of leafy matter, a little bit of bedding type material to make it a little bit more, I don't know, hopefully interesting for the worms. And seems like we got a pretty good quantity of this stuff over here. Let's see if we can spread it around. Like I said, I'm not going to be applying any more of that at this point. I believe these systems are already inundated enough with leaf stems that we probably don't want to keep doing that anymore. From now on, I think the bedding materials that we include with the feedings are going to be the types of bedding that the worm should be able to break down pretty readily. And that's usually paper type products. Even if it's leaves, perhaps leaves that I've screened to exclude the leaf stems. But putting leaf stems in at this point, I think, is just going to elongate the period of time it takes to see them all disappear, and that's something I prefer to avoid. So I think it's time to start thinking ahead to harvest, and thinking ahead in terms of not putting stuff in that's going to take a really long time to break down in the bedding category. So I think the name of the game is materials that are going to break down quickly. You know, I mean, we got pumpkin stems, we got the husks of mango seeds. We've got things in here that are most likely going to outlive these bins and just accompany the worms into their new home when it comes time to haul them out and introduce them into a new environment. And that's fine. But when it comes to all the leaf stems littering the material all over the place, it does seem to me like it's probably a good idea to not add any more stuff of that sort. So that's it for our check-in with the original Red Wigglers on day 175, 25 weeks in service, getting feeding number 16. And as far as positioning these plastic covers, I mean, it's certainly nothing very precise, but I do kind of like the idea of applying it this way with a little bit of breathing room around the edges, so that perhaps the systems will begin having an opportunity to lose some of their moisture content, and maybe it'll even help reduce the number of springtails. Not that there's a problem with springtails, but hey, it's a worm bin, you know? I'd rather just see worms in my systems if possible, but springtails are okay as well. So I got a couple things I've got to take care of getting cleaned up, put away, but I'm not going to waste time with that. That's boring. Before I go really quick, let me just say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel. That's very much appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.